to the first episode of the Radek Media Podcast. I'm honored to be joined by Debbie Hicks. This is a pilot episode where we'll be talking politics. I interviewed Debbie 4 years ago in the midst of lockdown. Debbie, please remind us what happened then, where you now, if we can have a quick introduction to refresh people's memory.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Obviously don't want to go into it too much because I think it's kind of a whole story on its own, really, isn't it? But which seemed to be obviously why lots of people got to know me. But yeah, in 2020, I think it was Christmas time. I think it was the second, or was it the third? I forget now. Part of the lockdown when they brought in new controls. I think we were put into tiers. I don't know if you remember that, with different conditions in different parts of the country. And where I lived at that time in Gloucestershire, I tried to remember the number of the tier. Was it tier 3? It was one from the top. It was quite severe. And they said that the local hospital was overrun with COVID patients. And I immediately became very suspicious because I was hearing different things about hospitals and about the people being ill. And I thought, I'm going to walk around. It's a public hospital in the public corridors and take a look. And that's exactly what I did. And obviously the footage just went viral. It went everywhere. It upset lots of people. The media got onto it and I was arrested. I was charged with a public order offence of using threatening words and behaviour because some members of staff asked me to leave when I was filming, and I did leave. There was nothing threatening or offensive, and I was convicted with that charge, unfortunately. And yeah, that was kind of, among other things that I did at the time, that was something that everyone seemed to remember, is this video of me walking around the hospital. Yeah. And
that was 2020, and there's been quite a few years now. You've been involved in Keep the Cash campaign. You were involved in Free Palestine marches. If you can give us some intro here.
Yeah, the Palestine issue goes back much further with me, well before lockdown. I would say around, 2016, 2014, I became, in an independent way, I wasn't involved with any pressure group like Palestine Solidarity Campaign or any of the big groups. I just independently, with some like-minded people, used to go out around Gloucestershire, around different places, towns and cities, and set up Stop Arming Israel street campaigns to try and inform the public. And when the lockdown came, as you know, Rad, obviously my focus very much became about lockdown and the attack on our civil liberties. But that was always in the background for me. And I was always aware at that time as well that Israel and the whole banking setup, because obviously, when you talk about Israel and you talk about Zionism in particular, the whole banking system is very much part of that. And it was very much set up, is modern Israel, to be part of this banking empire, colonial empire. But anyway, that interest never went away from me. And obviously in 2023, when with the attacks, October the 7th, supposed attacks of October the 7th, obviously the genocide. And when I say genocide, there's always been a genocide going on in Gaza for the last 76 years. But the increasing and intensified genocide that we've seen over the last few years is something that I've taken an interest in again. I haven't been as active as I used to be because I have got a criminal record for activism now, and I have to be a bit more careful. But I do go on the protests. I do speak out. Yeah. And the reason this issue is close to my heart, and the reason I've always spoken out for Palestine and against what Israel does, It's because, plain and simple, I don't want it to get into debates about religion. And I think once we get into that, we lose sight of what it's all about. It's plain and simple genocide and human rights abuse. And that's not acceptable. With muddying the waters with religious explanations from thousands of years ago, or even from the modern day, all irrelevant to me. It's the fact that normal people like you and I, Rad, and people listening, have had their homes stolen, their water taken away from them, their access to food, healthcare, education, the right to a home, all of that, being abused, being raped, being detained illegally, and that's even moved on now to the death sentence in Israel, which has been passed in their parliament. To me, it's that plain and simple. I don't care what the color of their skin is. I don't care if they're Muslims. I'm not interested in that debate. I'm not interested in the debate that they're Jewish either, because again, that's used to muddy the waters and confuse us all from not seeing something that's not acceptable. And as a human being, that's why I speak out.
And in both cases of lockdown and Israel genocide, or I should say United States-sponsored genocide, just executed by Israel, we are being gaslighted. The media, they're doing a terrible job of blaming victim,
Yes.
of completely brainwashing population into accepting complete absurdity. We've seen the same during COVID. Act like you've got it, complete brainwashing 24/7, creating panic when panic wasn't needed. And on the other hand, it's literally normalizing live stream genocide. I think we both agree here that for anybody, and I think especially if anybody is a parent, to see literal footage of children being torn to shreds by bombs, it is absolutely unacceptable. It's inhumane. And this is the sad realization that we had both in 2020 with people following the mass collective hysteria, and then on the other hand, justifying the genocide, and maybe not questioning the narrative at all, because we seen the whole of alleged pandemic being ended in one day with one dose of Vladimir Putin instigating a military operation, and in one day it was all over, and nobody asked a question, which was surprising. However, my point, and this is the reason why I wanted to speak with you, Debbie, because you're passionate about politics, and since this was few years now, for me personally, 2020 and the second protest I went into, as we were introducing ourselves, I witnessed UK police nearly killing a man in front of my own eyes. Being Polish person, it is living history for me to remember black and white documentary movies with this was paramilitia troops. They were called ZOMO, Zulu Oscar Mike Oscar. It doesn't translate perfectly to English, but this would mean mechanized paramilitia troops. So they weren't police, they weren't army, they were like a henchman that used to beat people protesting against the regime. So I witnessed this in 2020, and literally within 2 months, I witnessed them battering people so badly that I witnessed nearly 2 deaths. I thought literally at that time that those people were killed. They happened to survive, but over 2 years, I was live streaming those events, and the level of violence that I witnessed and I recorded was shocking. And for anybody, I guess it's not just Polish predicament, anybody from Eastern Europe that remembers what the totalitarian regimes is like and what living under totalitarian regime looked like. They immediately recognize where this is heading. All those events, they were looking very similar to the past events from Poland, Eastern Europe under communist regime. So we had a fierce censorship. We had a regime going rogue and becoming tyrannical. And then obviously attacking people, stifling the protests. It was like literally one-to-one carbon copy up till the moment where we had 1 million people protesting, because those protests in 2020, they were quite bleak. There was just a handful of people protesting. Police were heavy-handing those protests. They were arresting and beating people. And I remember in 2021, in March, there was a protest on the 20th of March, exactly, where I thought that there will be just a handful of hardcore protesters and we'll just end up being attacked and arrested. This didn't happen. What happened? 80,000 people turned up on that day. The reason why I refer to specific number is because early protest in London, full Trafalgar Square, consists crowd of, let's say, 38 to 40,000 people. So it gave me like a good reference point to be able to assess the size of a crowd. And those protests grew from March 80,000, then April 250,000, 500,000 in May, and in June, with the culmination on 26th of June, we had 1 million people protesting in London. But what didn't happen, there was no formation of political movement out of that. So that movement, which we refer to as a freedom movement, only had a temporary goal. This was ad hoc movement.
That's a very good way of describing it.
Which just created, just gathered to respond to immediate threat of lockdowns. But here we are. So not much changed since, for better. If things have changed, they changed for worse. We see.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I do agree with you somewhat. I mean, I think sadly, which I think really, if we'd have had time to stop and reflect at the time, and we didn't, because we were all living in kind of the fast lane and being very reactive and just living day to day. That's how I felt we were as activists, because we honestly felt, I don't know if you felt the same, Rad, that we didn't know if there was going to be a tomorrow in terms of our rights, if we were going to be locked, shut up in a detention centre or a so-called COVID camp like they had in Australia and New Zealand. So there was an urgency and a need for people to grab out. I remember we literally felt like that. If you met someone that got it and understood that it was a big scam, and we kind of just wanted to grab them and say, okay, we're together. So, which was a fantastic thing, but it was ad hoc in that way. It wasn't a kind of proper solidified movement like other political movements, where it's much more organized and people come together in a kind of a more organized way. And while that was the beauty of it, it was very organic and real. I think the other side of it is because people were all so different, and outside of lockdown probably wouldn't have much in common politically as well. You have people that were seen as from the left, whatever that means, and I hate using these terms. I used to use these terms a lot, but from the left or the right, that would never have seen eye to eye. I remember, standing on platforms with people like Jeff Wyatt, who I'm sure if he was still alive today, I wouldn't agree with him on a lot of things, but we were all so different, but we came together and we got on. But I think if we'd have had the chance to think about that, we would have been able to see that we would not last. It would not last very long. And it hasn't. I mean, to be honest, it lasted longer than it probably should have, really, because we were so different. I mean, for a few years, obviously, we went out and I was one of those people and tried to keep it going with fighting for keeping cash and against the technocracy and the digital stuff. I really kept that going because I wanted to try and use that momentum still from the lockdown. And it was still there for a while. But I completely agree with you. I think the last 2 years, I would say, it's just gone down to nothing. And I think that was inevitable. And I also think there has been some skullduggery and shenanigans from the deep state as well, that have made sure that that's happened to this movement as well. On a much wider scale, I don't just mean within the freedom movement. I mean, in terms of the whole political agenda has been very cleverly engineered in the last few years to move people with those sentiments at that time of the lockdown, you and I and the Jeff Wyatts, and not maybe the Piers Corbyn. Piers is always there and very awake, but all the different kind of right and left kind of fragments in the freedom movement. It's been deliberately, in my opinion, over the last 2 or 3 years, taken over and weaponized by this agenda, this fear of Mr. Johnny Foreigner. It's taken, I would literally say that topic in particular has taken over the psyche of so many people that were in the freedom movement, to the point where, and I say this respectfully, they can't see the wood from the trees. And I think that's where the powerful people have managed to take back control. I feel like, I don't know if you agree with me, I feel like they almost lost control of the political narrative, the elite, the ruling class during the lockdown, because it's like, oh my God, we've got Tommy Robinson supporters and we've got Jeremy Corbyn supporters on our rallies together. What are we going to do? Oh my God. It's unity, wasn't it? Ultimate unity. And then, of course, they had to reel that back in. And I have to say, I don't mean to be defeatist, but they do seem to have done it. So
I think, as a Polish person, Polish origin, there is probably historical trauma in me. And I see maybe there is certain interpretation of events that I will have that might be different for British people. And this is just down to the different history. So, like say, Polish history was quite rough. And this is the reason why I engage by, first of all, when this whole lockdown show started, narrative just didn't add up. I went to first protest without having any opinion either way, and I was just curious. And on the first protest, this was in Sheffield, this was protest by Stand Up X, I just heard some things about Big Pharma. I never heard anything like this. This was just intriguing for me, and I knew I want to see what will happen next. And the next protest was happening in London. This was August, and basically from that day, this was turning point, because at the end of this protest, not only I witnessed this violence, which resembled me one-to-one historical events from Poland, I also witnessed that poor bloke being beaten so badly that I thought that he was beaten to death in front of my own eyes. And this traumatized me. I ended up traveling for over 2 years and live streaming those protests. Some of them, like Trafalgar Square one, this went viral. It had 250,000 live views within a week. And then going forward over 2 years of time combined, I managed to get 1 million live views. So some of the protests, they would be very small, like 50 people gathering in hall, and 14,000 people would watch this live. So I felt at that time that this was important to be at the front line of this. And I thought literally that we might be heading, this is what you mentioned, that we might be heading to martial law, that we might be heading to escalation, major escalation. So I had a red siren over my head, and I thought that this is really...
it was very tyrannical. And I do feel, and we can talk about this as well if you want to, because there's so much to unpick with all this, but I don't think I quite put the pieces together at the time, because I look back now. I mean, I remember thinking years ago when we went through the credit crunch, what they called the credit crunch in 2000, I think it was 2008, wasn't it? Where obviously Gordon Brown was the prime minister and he sold off all the gold, didn't he? And obviously he bailed out the banks, didn't he? Do you remember in 2008? And I remember thinking then and looking at all the economic patterns, and the economic patterns mirrored the lead up to World War II. And I remember thinking then, oh gosh, I think this is what's coming down the line. I wasn't sure how long or when. I remember thinking that. And then obviously lockdown came. And I think between 2008 and 2020, I think which is what we've been living through, actually. I think we've been just living in an economic era of everything being propped up, in the sense of this economic and political system could no longer function in the way it had for such a long time. The economy of debt and the petrodollar system. And I think, there's been this sort of period of time where they're sort of trying to transition us to a new economy. And I think lockdown was very much kind of like the test run about moving us to this technocratic system, this great reset, or what's the other term that they call it? Agenda 2030 is another term. It's all the same thing. People sort of go into the technicalities of all this, but I will see it as all the same thing about moving to this new technocratic economy, which I have to say, because there's a lot of division. Again, this is where the political stuff comes in on the left and the right in terms of how they see that. The right tend to talk about it in terms of globalism, quite rightfully. And then the left tend to talk about it in terms of capitalism, which I don't disagree with either being the problem. But actually, when you're looking at the Eastern countries, you're looking at China, you're looking at Russia, what's left, that former Soviet Union, Russia, these superpowers, they're all going to technocracy. So everything's going to technocracy. So we've got this kind of illusion, if you like, of a polar world of East versus West, and this world war that's building. We're in a world war. We have to be honest about it. We are in a world war. They're never going to say it to people, but that's what we are. And I can look back now and see that the lockdown, I didn't see it at the time, Rad. I don't know if you feel this way now. I can very much see that it was the trial run. It was kind of like the experiment for war controls, because obviously if we're going into full-blown war mode in this country, which we will be, and they keep telling us this, they don't hide it, they tell us that conscription's coming, national service is coming, prepare for it, all this stuff about, have your emergency supplies, or they're trying to scare people at the same time, of course, but they're also telling people. And there's all sorts of stuff going on behind the scenes where they're preparing for this. There's all experiments going on, protocols being put in place ready for this. And I can look back now and see that the lockdown, we were being experimented on in the sense of, how can you control people? What will they and won't they do? How will the police control people? How can you lock people down in terms of places where they can and can't go, which is what you have to do in a war. Because in World War II in this country, any countries that are at war, where they're under attack, that is, they have to put restrictions in place on where people go, like they did during lockdown, which is what the tours were really about. I think that was them kind of experimenting with that. And I think sorry, that's my cat crying. I don't know if you can hear that. She's crying. And she's a bit hot, and I don't think she knows what to do with herself.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. But I don't know. Can you see how that all, if we take away this idea of it all being about a virus or a pandemic, if we just take all that away and just think about, which is how I saw it at the time, actually, because I very much believe in civil liberties, and we just see about what they were doing with our civil liberties and our freedoms, and how that's, exactly what they need to do in war. We take that away. We take the idea of war away even, and it's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. And it's also the same thing that it's going to take us to, Rad, in the sense of, how do you bring in all those controls like you did during lockdown, and like you need to for a war, like in World War II? You can do it digitally now. You can use all that digital stuff that they want to bring in for this new economy digital ID, cashless society, 15-minute cities, controls on where you can't go, who you can see.
There is so many aspects of this. There is obviously propaganda, there is political engineering, media manipulation. We could discuss this in length, and it's hard to really condense this into, let's say, one interview. So if you would like to join me on those podcasts and discuss like current situation and like ideas of what can we do about this, because I noticed there's
that's the $1 million question, but yeah, we could talk about it. Yeah,
because I noticed that there is this tendency of people talking about problem but not necessarily pointing to the solution.
That's very true. Yeah.
If I would believe personally that we got no chance, I would be running for hills, if you like. But being Polish and seeing that this transformation is possible in a country like Poland and whole of the Eastern Europe, who overthrew the dictatorship, communist regime, then I knew that this is possible. But from day one, when I realized that there are similarities with what we are experiencing today, I knew that this would not be easy process. In Poland, in particular, it took 48 years. After World War II, we were under Soviet Union. We were handed to Stalin. We were handed to Soviet sphere of influence, and we didn't regain independence until 1989 election. So this was a long process that happened, and obviously the time is accelerating nowadays. But I wanted to just give a little bit of a history in a very small pill, because historically Poland had a very rough history. Before World War I, we disappeared from map for 123 years straight. We were partitioned by our neighbors, so we were under occupation. We lost our independence. We only regained country back, and this was in reduced size after World War I. And the brief period between World War I and World War II, we had another war coming. After World War II, I thought we were fighting on the side of alliance. There was a famous, you might recall, Polish plane fighters battle for London. We were directly involved in that fight, but we were still handed to Stalin in Yalta. So from that point of view, from very, let's say, difficult history, and especially at the before end of the World War II, we had a Warsaw Uprising, which could resemble modern situation in Gaza, where citizens of Warsaw, they uprised. They didn't have a weapon, so very similarities are very stunning. 250,000 people were murdered. That means civilians executed. Then 600,000 people were displaced, and 80% of Warsaw was completely leveled. So this pretty much is what they're doing today in Gaza. We got similar numbers. What is reported is 77,000 deaths, but I would more or less think that this will be at least 10% of Gaza population, which is roughly 200,000. Obviously injuries.
And that's conservative, very conservative estimate as well.
So
it's probably far more
this is the thing. History repeats itself, or as they say, the history rhymes, because it doesn't repeat itself.
Absolutely. It's always the same playbook, the way that they do things.
Patterns re-emerge. So what you mentioned about totalitarian system, all the totalitarian system, when you strip them to the bare bone, it is always collusion of a big state and big business and media collusion, media doing propaganda for the regime, regardless whether this was communism, fascism, Nazism, or now technocracy. It is same arrangement. But reason why I wanted to speak with you especially is because 1 second, it's so hot that
it's gone off.
My camera overheated.
Yeah, all our sockets went off last night and came back on this morning. It must have the heat. It is very warm today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I will let it cool down. I will switch to this in a moment. It's a pilot episode, so you have to bear with us. We tried to do this last Friday, but we had some technical issue. I was testing new streaming system, and we didn't get luck with getting audio going. So it is what it is, but we will get better. So back to what I said, the
Yes.
Polish history was quite brutal, but then on the other hand, it's also it's relatable. It's basically something that we can learn from what happened in the past, and we can draw some lessons. Because in Poland, this process took 48 years, so nearly half a century.
Yes.
I knew that this will take decades, even nowadays. But now we got social media; we're free to speak like we do. In Poland, you couldn't speak in open against the government. People were printing underground press, underground magazines to get informed. This was under threat of death, under threat of arrest. So we are facing completely different reality. But what we're facing as well is this soft totalitarianism, because as much as there was a direct violence in Poland and Eastern Europe, this violence is non-existent in UK. It is slowly encroaching. People are being nicked for memes, anti-government posts, etc. So this is, again, history doing full circle. However, in Poland, this process started from similar like anti-lockdown protests. It started as an organic movement. People were protesting in workplaces, basically grinding country to a halt. And eventually, what happened was that this was turned into political movement. And this is obviously I'm condensing awful lot in a very short sentence, but we were still under threat of being invaded by Soviet army, right? So this wasn't just a case of people not wanting or wanting to do something. There was a direct threat of confrontation, and we were basically in this difficult situation. So in 1980, it was only in 1980 where we were allowed to form political party. But this didn't happen in a void. So what happened, and this is, Debbie, to what you said, that everything will be revolving around the economy and the way that we are governed. Because things that people are being afraid today, like CBDCs, we had CBDCs in Poland. They were called coupons. Basically, the rationing was on, and you could only exchange. There was no free market. Market was fully controlled by the state, and you could only exchange coupons for a certain amount of produce, which was obviously controlled by the state. So we are again doing full circle back to it, but with new toys, because obviously coupons were not programmable, while new tool is allowing more control. But in 1970, what happened, and this is maybe that we're heading to the same repetition in time. In 1970, government crashed the economy. Prices of food skyrocketed, and people went out protesting. This was seaside towns. Thousands of people went out protesting. It wasn't like one protest in one town. It was various protests in several towns happening at the same time. This was December 1970. And we had a direct confrontation with government, where government ordered shoot to kill. They murdered 42 people, they shot 42 people, and they injured over 1,000. But this was basically that final straw that broke the camel's back. So there was no such thing as we speak in British history. There was no such direct confrontation between the regime and the citizens.
Yeah.
So I think that eventually this will be heading that way, because the economical situation is worsening, and this is where we are repeating similar cycle. So what happened then? We were still not allowed to form political party at that time, but then the international events, they kind of softened this stance because, first of all, Communist Party regime, the leadership, they were old people who were dying out. They were replacing one with another, and we had a basically change in the Communist Party leadership, which weakened the party, which weakened the Soviet Union. And there was new election in the United States at the time, which basically relaxed the atmosphere. And that was the reason why in 1980, Polish people, they were allowed to form for first time political opposition, which was delegalized.
Who was the American president? Was that Jimmy Carter in 1980?
I think so, but
yeah,
I don't want to.
It's just interesting because obviously I'm not saying American presidents.
Let me check.
Control, but he was probably out of the best out of a bad bunch, if you like. So yeah, that's interesting. So 1980, yeah.
Yes. So Carter was. I'm just checking this.
No, I think Reagan was elected a bit later, wasn't he? But I might be wrong. But yeah.
Carter served from 1971 to 75 as governor of Georgia. When he became president, 77 to 81. Yeah, so that was that election. That was Carter.
Right.
And basically, new election. This was a combination of all those things. So pressure in the country. So protests never stopped. We're just not allowed to formulate opposition. So in 1980, when we were allowed to form political party, then here comes the numbers. 12 million people out of 36 million people country joined political party. This caused meltdown in the government, and in December 1981, a year later, we had a martial law. So basically, government rolled out tanks on the street, and this was this situation that basically government lost the control. They knew that they need to do something, and they went for a kill. First thing that they did, they arrested thousands of people. Anybody that was activist, anybody that was in leadership of Solidarity movement. This was the movement that turned into political party, Solidarity movement, Solidarność. Basically, this movement turned into political party. And this caused meltdown in communist government. They thought if they will cut the head, if they will arrest everybody, this is literally what they did. They arrested and put thousands of people in detention camps, some of them for as long as 1986. So some of them, they were held in intern camps till 1986. So this, just imagine, 12 million out of 36 million population. This was
1986. I was in my second year of secondary school, I think.
Yeah, so
there's me having that freedom going to school, and that's happening in Poland. Yeah.
This was 33% of population. What's more important, that was 50% of working adults, because that's to join political party, you'd have to pay like the fee and become involved in that movement. So this was the engagement. So I would say more than half of a country, that's just the numbers, registration and working people. But I would say that more than half a country was absolutely fed up to death with this oppression, with the regime. Yeah. There was also a series of very tragic events, like murder of activists, murder of famous priest Popiełuszko. He was brutally beaten to death. He had broken ribs. They ripped his tongue, broke his fingers. The brutality of that murder basically was something that turned the country again against the communist regime. So they didn't help themselves. So I'd say the final straw that broke the camel back was 1970, December, when they shoot those 42 people. And then obviously they didn't stop themselves, so they were still oppressing people. So they thought that they need to do something. So this was more like a venting mechanism. So they thought, okay, if we give them something, if we give them inch, just to vent the pressure, so it won't explode, it won't get worse, then we will normalize the situation. So I thought they arrested all the leaders of opposition. First thing to really admire with those people, I'm not saying, because there was in every country, in every chapter of a history, there was an infiltration. There is no pure people. There's no ideal world where we're living. Everybody is involved somehow in the history, in the political relationship. Everybody got the past, right? So obviously there could be critique from some people. But then when you really look at this, all those thousands of people, surely they were offered bribe, they were offered position of power, but in the end they didn't betray. They say there will be no solidarity without justice. So they had a very high moral ground, and I think this is really what changed this, the whole of Eastern Europe, because this was about moral change. Because when you look at totalitarian regime, like let's say Germany, like every sixth person in the country would be working with the regime, grassing to the secret police, or this was a rule of terror. And this is what can repeat for people who are not versed in the past. This is another saying that people who are literate with the history, they are watching in disbelief how history is repeating itself, while people who don't understand the history, they don't have any understanding of history. They just don't understand what is going on.
No.
So to conclude this, so from that event, so 1980, 12 million people joined political party. Then government announced the military lockdown for 2 years, right? They rolled out tanks on the street. This is something which I might not remember because I was a child, but I still remember my mom casually saying to me that she saw a tank on the street. It only hit me like gravity of that as an adult person when you think like government rolled out tank on its own people, right? I couldn't understand this as a child, but that's what I'm saying. This is living history for me, whether I want or not. And I was literally born in the middle of that period, 1981 till 1983. I was born in the middle of this. So whether I want or not.
So your account of that period is from your family?
Yes, but this is living history. You remember this from elementary school, black and white movies. It's just it's like living history for you. This is the best I can describe. It's not something abstract. It's just a very real thing that happened. But how it ended up. So by 1986, obviously, protests, they never stopped. They arrested thousands of people, and they thought, if we cut the head of the organization, if we arrest all the activists,
sorry to interrupt. It's because I've had my computer on so long tonight. Obviously, I was trying to get a connection. I'm going to plug in my computer because my battery is going to run out any moment.
Yes, that's fine.
So I will carry on talking while
I will switch my screen while you're doing this.
Sorry, bear with me.
Yes, that's fine. So while Debbie is doing this, I will just continue. So what happened in that period? Protests never stopped. I thought several thousands of people were arrested and kept in detention camps. Solidarity movement never stopped. In 1986, informal negotiations started with the leaders of opposition, which eventually led to an event called Round Table in 1989. This was a lengthy process for months. Government was debating with the opposition how they will be allowed into election. And this ended up with the election in June 1989, where basically where opposition won. We basically won the election in the independent party called Solidarity took over and basically whole of the communist government needed to step down. We completely replaced them. So this is for people who don't understand the role of politics. 2020 is the best example of how politics can affect us. It can affect us directly, and this is something that we might not appreciate. I can understand that people are disenfranchised because the same way like communist regime wasn't representing Polish people, then you can say that Starmer regime, Rishi Sunak regime, or Liz Truss regime, Boris Johnson regime, Uniparty, that would be a better way to refer to them, regime does not represent interest of British people. So this could develop in British people this understanding that necessarily people who speak your language, they might not necessarily be your representative. And as usual, there are people who benefit from the situation. It's the same like in Poland during communist time. There were people who were benefiting from the regime and from the oppression of majority, and the same in the UK. Recent election is proving that because only 15% of people entitled to vote effectively elected Labour. This obviously proves that election is in a way rigged. In UK, this rule is called first past the post. That's why government who received only such a small amount of vote could be formulated. But this is not the case. Ultimately, when you look at this, you should understand that people ultimately can do this. So in Poland, we were thinking that we're heading to martial law, to home war. Situation was really tense with 2 years where government had the military on the street. So this was very difficult period. And all these years under communist government, they were not a nice period in the history, in the Polish history. However, this is also proving you that eventually people can achieve change through political organization. So what isn't happening in UK? There is no direct confrontation between the government and people. People are still not that desperate, so the squeeze is not enough, but it's heading that way since 2020. Prices of energy are skyrocketing. This is not the case that we got some sort of a shortage. It's a case when we are being told about cost of living crisis. It's more likely cost of corruption crisis. We see record high profit of energy companies. Also, when you consider that most of the energy price or significant percentage of the fuel price and energy price is actual tax, then you will understand that regime is very invested in that. I had a few comments which I want to bring on while Debbie is sorting her laptop. We spent some time to start this, and it's his first episode, so it is. It's not going to be perfect, but done always beats perfect. So the first was from Bob G9V, whoever it is. What genocide? It's live stream genocide of United States funded genocide committed by Israelis in Gaza. Currently, it's spreading to Lebanon, so I hope this clarifies that. Where is Radek from? I'm Polish nationality. and Simon. I liken the 2020 movement to the summer of love in '89. Spontaneity bamboozled the establishment, but as soon as the organization was enforced, that tainted movement and created many enemies within. This is something to be said on that. That's why I'm bringing history, Polish history here, because this impromptu movement was just created ad hoc to oppose lockdowns, but it never had political goals. So this was just a temporary thing to lift down restriction. There was a direct threat, and people, they basically. Hello, Debbie.
Sorry, it's completely my fault. I pulled out my Wi-Fi plug. So
that's
sorry.
Okay.
We're not having a great night, are we, with issues? I'm back. I am sorry. Anyway, let's get back to where we were. So
okay, so I will just wrap up this section because I was replying to comments. This movement, so-called freedom movement, protest anti-lockdown, they were impromptu, they were organized ad hoc, and people only organized to counter direct threat of lockdowns,
yes.
Which basically this never transformed into full-fledged political movement like it happened in Poland. And this could be heading that way eventually if the situation would escalate. So for people who say that protest doesn't work, I would ask you to correct your statement, because clearly the evidence of lifting lockdown is the evidence that protests work. The same way with the political engagement in Poland, we managed to actually, through means of political process, we managed to create from organic movement, from protest movement, we created political organic movement, grassroots movement. The problem we have now is not that we need to, let's say, burn world to the ground. Some people are calling for absolute anarchy, and they want to reject the system, and they are anti-everything. That's unnecessary. What we have to have is just to fix politics. Because for people who also say that politics doesn't work, I would like to politely remind you that it was politics that locked you down in your homes in 2020, locked down your businesses, restricted your movement.
Yeah,
this was politics, and also.
Absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely sort of ban on with that. I mean, I hear, and I've heard over the last 6 years, so much discussion about, it's a phrase that somebody posted online the other day, somebody that I know actually that I really like, but they actually used the phrase, well, you're feeding the beast by talking about this stuff. You're feeding the system. And it's like, no, that's exactly what they want. Is the opposite, is they want people disconnected from politics. When I say politics as well, I'm not just talking about party politics and putting your ballot paper in the box. That's just one small part of it. Politics is everything from what we're doing now, like discussing stuff, to street activism, leafleting, protesting, demonstrating, having a meeting in your local town hall about, I don't know, a school that's being closed down, the state of the roads, everything from that to protesting about Gaza, protesting about immigration and boats, whatever it is, whatever your issue. Politics, all of it is politics. And there's always going to be something in any society, a democratic society that is, that that we're going to feel strongly about, or that we disagree with, or that and to say that is politics. That is, all of it is politics. So I think it's very naive, and I think it's also very foolish to think that we can shut ourselves off from this completely. Think that we can go and live. I don't know how you feel about this, Rad, as well, but there has developed this big off-grid movement in the freedom community, what's left of the freedom community. I sit down and I hear loads of people talking about this a lot of the time. And while I'm not against the idea of people trying to be more self-sufficient, I don't think that's a bad thing. It is a complete pipe dream to think that you can go and form your own society when all this is going on. I mean, we are living in 2026, not 300 years ago, where you can go and live off in the hills and be left alone. We're living in 2026 we're talking about all this technology. And I think for us to think that we can just turn our backs to all this and go and live in our gardens or whatever, I'm sorry. I just, there's that kind of mentality that I have to say it does really bug me, because
it is very reason why I wanted to speak with you, because people, they came with there was many things that were absolutely new to me in 2020. Like, for example, I never heard term anti-vaxxer. It just never occurred to me to even question vaccines and even look at this. I just thought, okay, it's 3 jabs that you have as a kid. That was in my memory, and I would never look into this. But obviously, what you and me, we experience in terms of vaccination regime, there were completely different medical products. And
yes, yeah.
Nowadays, it just turned into for-profit business where we are being force medicated, and we literally experienced pharmaceutical apartheid. There was this comedian, I forgot his name, Woody Harrelson, who famously was criticized for his speech at the stand-up show, and he said the movie script goes like this: all the drug cartels come together, they buy out all the politicians and all the media, and they lock people down in their houses, and they don't let them out till they buy their drugs. And I threw the script away. Who would believe that crazy idea? So he did this sketch. But this is literally, jokes aside, this is something that we experience, literal pharmaceutical apartheid. If you don't take product of the company, then if you don't force medicate yourself, then you will lose your liberties, which what we discussed behind the scene before we set up the podcast is direction of fascism, where corporations are dictating how we've got to live, what sorts of drugs we have to take. So this is absurd, and this is something that people need to realize. This is the reason why I wanted to speak to Debbie, because she's very grounded and she got political experience, and she understands that with all those psyops, we are actually being taken away from the only solution. The only solution is not running for the mountain, being prepper. The only solution is politics. Unless you're ready for all-out war.
And that's where it gets difficult, though, because I think you're absolutely right. Everything that you've said this evening, I completely agree with. We must always look at history, and of course you're going to get people probably listening and saying, well, history's made up. And it's, of course, there's lots of lies about history and only one side of history. I'm not saying that. But we have to look at the trajectory of, how countries move through periods or where people have rights and they don't have rights, and how war and how, genocide or all these things, the kind of patterns that develop, so that I don't mean this in a selfish way at all as well, because I feel very strongly about what happens to people in other countries. But more for people that are listening, what you need to understand is what they do in other countries and to other people, they will do to you and your children. And I'm sure this is why you're also wanting to talk about this, Rad. This is what's coming, not just here. I think, the Western world, all the countries that have enjoyed democratic rights, what is coming is this full-blown totalitarian system, which they've been, as we said earlier, they've been experimenting with in recent years. They are changing the law all the time. At the moment, they're trying to take away our right to protest. We knew that during lockdown, that's what it was all about. And now the way they're doing it very cleverly with the Palestine movement for freedom for Palestine and the, the protesters for Palestine Action, because it's been a prescribed terrorist group, and they're not allowed to say they support it. The way they've clamped down on those people saying they're terrorists. And now,
they clamped down on the direct action. So this actually goes to prove that protests actually work. Because if this just takes a handful of people to disrupt the whole military complex, this is just going to show you where the strength is. And what people need to understand is that for UK, this is 68 million people country, up heading to 70 million population, between 68 to 70 million. So I don't want to under or overestimate. So let's stay within that bracket. So 68 million is a big number. And when we look at police force only represent 160,000 people.
yes,
Military, including civilian personnel, this is 240,000. So you got together 400,000 people to restrain physically population of 68 million. This is not happening in any wild dream. That's why those people, they need to revert to terror, to psychological pressure, non-stop fear, porn, propaganda. And we've seen this in 2020 when they went on, they were calling people like ourselves granny killers, disease-spreading rats, and all sorts of names. But now this thing is changing because they cannot keep this constant fear. But they did a very good job initially. We need to give them that.
I think you again, you've hit the nail on the head there. Fear, always the politics of fear. How you take people's rights away as you scare them, I think that's what that's what they've done. You're talking about that historical what's happened in Poland. We're talking about what's been going on in Gaza. Closer to home, we've got examples of Northern Ireland and very similar history and parallels there, which is why you get a lot of Irish people that support the Palestinian cause, because they understand, because of what the British did in Ireland for such a long time, how they divided people against and pitted people against each other while they maintained control. And that's exactly what we're witnessing here. And don't get me wrong, we've always had a history of fascist movements in this country, as all countries have. We've always had a history of erupting at different times, race wars. You go back to the 80s and there were riots in this country, there were racial riots. But I feel this is being used in a different way now. What do you feel, Rad? I feel at that time in the 80s, a lot of the race riots were really the Thatcher government's way of taking the focus away from the fact that she was, and it was politically very big what she was doing. She was selling off all our public services in this country. Everything was being privatization, which ultimately for the working class at that time, the working class were much more unified in this country at that time and much more against things like that. They were much more politically aware. They were very much against that. So if you had race riots going on where people's minds were focused on blaming, the black population or the Asian population, whatever it was, in London and in the cities, then when people were focused on that and fighting with the police, they were not focusing on the fact that you had this government that was selling off everything, and in the process selling off what was ours. And we can see the mess the country's in now, where we've got public services that don't work properly. We've got no housing for people. We've got a whole set of problems. So again, that was about distracting people back then. Race wars, racism, scapegoating people is always used to distract and divide people.
Yes, it is. I remember, and this obviously happened before Brexit was concluded. There was this joke going on. The people weren't angry on dingy guys. They were angry on people like me. It was us bloody Poles taking them jobs and stealing wives, allegedly. So I remember those jokes going around, and I didn't feel nice. But then when I engaged with somebody in debate, this was my, professional acquaintance, as you say. Colleague of mine, professional colleague. She was working as a mortgage broker at the time. I was working in property at that time, and I truly respected her from her professional background. And she went really hard on for pro-Brexit stance. And I thought this was directly affecting me. She had very civilized discussion. I engaged in that discussion, and I actually agreed on her points, because I agree with her that I can understand position of British people that they don't want to have nobody unelected to tell them how they have to run their country, how they have to live. So this makes sense. So I thought this would be directly affecting me. I agree on this, and I would respect this as democratic choice, right? But the joke is that Brexit never really happened, and from unelected bureaucrats in Brussels, we now have unelected technocrats or billionaires from Davos dictating policies. So for people who, again, are saying that politics doesn't work, it does. It does. You're paying through the nose.
Oh, absolutely it does. It's just that it's always a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of process, you know. And I think it was there was a British politician you may have heard of called, and I always quote this because I did absolutely love him, called Tony Benn. He was a Labour politician, but he wasn't like Labour politicians. He was he had his own mind. And he and there was a famous quote he said, there's always going to be a fight. You know, every generation there's always going to be a fight. So toughen up, bloody toughen up. In other words, we're always going to have to do this as people. The world, you know, the people that control the banks and the big financial institutions, the powerful families and banking dynasties, or that have always controlled things for such a long time, they're always going to do everything they can to fleece us, take everything away from us, take our rights away, and we will always have to put up a fight. And and if we don't put up a fight, we're not going to. And that's that's our modern political history, is that there's been this fight. And yes, sometimes it goes backwards and then it shuffles forward again, and it goes back. And I feel like that's what's happening if we look back. A lot of people at the moment have been talking about the suffragettes. The women, that really did some quite.
They literally committed terrorist acts, and
they would be classed as terrorists now. They would be like those Palestine action people that have been demonized by the press as terrorists. They too would be fined in that way if they were alive today. But they had to go all out with their activism to get women the right to vote, to be recognized. And we look back, most people now look back at that and say that was right, that women got the vote, and that people had to do these things to do that. So, and I'm not saying Palestine action protesters are violent, because they're not violent at all, but similarly, there will be a time in the future when people will look back at people that are protesting about Palestine and say that was right that people did those things, that was right that they spray painted the plane, or that they
two things, like if you have to really squeeze down what constitutes power or how power places. It's very old saying. It's divide and conquer, and bread and circus. So you have to keep people divided, because otherwise they can unite, like we've seen during anti-lockdown with uncanny. I was calling this phenomenon like a Lord of the Rings. When you look at the characters of Lord of the Rings, like all those uncanny creatures, dwarves, elves, robbers, hobbits, all sorts of uncanny creatures living completely in isolated worlds, they come together to face the big threat. That's how I felt about this, because it was so uncanny, like how many connections we've made, how many people. I'm a shy person. I never hugged so many strangers in my life, like during anti-lockdown protests. It was like raw, genuine, humane energy.
It was a fantastic time, because for me as well, I come from politically a left background, and that's most of the people that I'd worked with and associated with. And to be honest, I think I was at a point in my life where I'd had enough of all that as well. I'd been suspended from the Labour Party. And I didn't want to rejoin, even though they offered the MP where I live fought to get my membership back, and I thought, no, sod it, I don't want to know anymore. I'd reached my end of the line with the Labour Party then, and I think when the lockdown came, and then it was just all these such different people that I would not necessarily have got on with before. I found it very refreshing that we put all that aside and we came together. And I just feel it's just such a lost opportunity that couldn't continue. And I have really tried, Rad, for it to continue. I mean, recently, I'm not going to go into that too much because it's probably not relevant to our discussion, but I tried working with people in Swindon that think different to me politically. I went into an alliance as an independent, an informal alliance with another a gentleman from Swindon who sees things quite differently to me on these issues we're talking about. And I suggested it to him, I approached him, and the reason I did that is I was still trying to bring people together on the things that we do agree on, keeping cash, being against a ID, being against the lockdown, being against forced vaccinations. We agreed on that rather than looking at the stuff we disagreed on. But sadly, I think people tend to go back to those entrenched positions, which is what I see happening. And I think
everything, when you look at this, everything is made up, right? Man-made. We agree to the politics, we agree to the law, we agree to the concept of money, we agree to the economy. This is agreement, right? We have to came with those ideas. This is conceptual idea implemented in real life. So those things, this is what people don't seem to understand. Those things can change, because I can understand the position where people are in now, because they are not represented and they feel disenfranchised. I can absolutely understand this. But do you think that communist government in Poland, where they're acting lawfully, legally, or they were just? Of course not. It was illegal to protest. You could literally be murdered. They could land you in a local river with the cement shoes on. Okay, it was that bad, and we don't have any of that yet, right?
Yes.
And we got it so easy, and we're not organizing. This is something I cannot understand as a Polish person, that when you got this opportunity, people are not doing anything about this, and they are so divided. But I can understand this. This is what I said, that there was few discoveries I had which I didn't understand. One of them was like anti-vaxxers. And again, this is surprisingly now, the thing is, the pendulum swings both ways, right? And swings from one extreme to another. So one extreme was pharmaceutical apartheid. And then on the other hand, now people want to go completely against medicine. Like you said, being prepper, going to really fringe ideas. They're going into actual escapism, because what you said to me, run for mountains, it's not fight for your country. It's not to provide nice future for your children. This is my realization as a Polish person. I know if that generation of my parents and grandparents, if they wouldn't stand up to the regime, I wouldn't be free to live life I was living. So I'm just playing forward. And I got this understanding, but those people don't. And escapism, also another thing which I didn't realize, they are so many identities. When we discuss divide and conquer, there are so many fractions and groups. There's like a tribalism. When the protest started, there was so many.
You mean in this country, or in Poland? Are you talking about both? Or
in Poland, actually, every country. Do you think that people weren't divided in Poland? Absolutely. They were divided. There were always attempts to mess around, but this is the whole challenge, that people need to come together over our differences.
Yes.
Because perhaps you and me, Debbie, we might not agree 100% on everything, but we agree on several major issues, and we are coming over our differences, and we're both making effort. That's how I always treated my activism and live streaming. I was speaking to absolutely everybody, because there was so many groups. There was Stand Up X, Save Our Rights. There was a variety of those.
There were lots of different groups and people, absolutely. And I think...
and I would speak to absolutely anybody, and I wouldn't put anybody over anybody else. I would speak to people who
I
didn't
know
create.
you're very good at doing that. You really did sort of cover a lot, didn't you? And yeah,
I was speaking to average person in a crowd, not just people who wanted the limelight, because some people, let's not hide this, they just
yeah,
use this opportunity to springboard themselves in politics. So they wanted to use activism as
mm,
excuse to get into politics. So
yeah,
those
yeah,
things also happen. But the key message I've got for people today is that people feel disenfranchised. And this is the biggest psyop of our time, in my opinion, because the politics, this is the only thing there is. Because on end of the day, it's four things that run the society. The first thing is economy. Everything human species is doing is economical in nature. Then the second thing, as we have no collective mind, we've got to use politics, right? We're not bees, we're not ants, we don't think alike. We have to come over our differences and negotiate it. And obviously, this includes the economy, the business, right? And the third is there is media. Media does not create reality per se, it creates perception of reality. So they can spout the propaganda.
yeah.
So we have neither of those. The fourth column that underpins the reality as we know it is the institution, is the organizations. So this you can say this is a what is called the institutions. Basically, they governments they change, but then institutions stay. Right, like
Yes,
local councils, road companies, water companies, electricity companies, and so on. So infrastructure, and then there's a memory in each country. So the governments can change, but then certain things they still continue. So it is all combined into one thing, and this is what we need to understand. And the politic is the key. So as let's say if we accept that institutions needs to exist, they're so-called public servants, but then all those three pillars, politics, economy, and media, we've got no leverage in here. So that's why people feel disenfranchised. That's why people feel that politics doesn't work. It bloody does, but it's not working for you. You have
they
no
and they
representation.
rightfully, if I
Here's the
may say
difference.
so. Sorry, I
That's
was
the
going to say
difference.
right. I think they rightfully think, and I do understand this, that when they say politics doesn't work, as I said earlier, I think they're looking at the voting system, the fact that you've got a no Labour, Conservative. What have we got at the moment? We've got Reform, which is just basically the Conservatives rehashed. That's what it is. The Green Party, they've been around for a long time as well. So you've got quite controlled parties, and you've got an electoral system, first past the post. We probably talked about this before, that tends to keep electing the same. I don't know if I've lost you now, Raj. No, I haven't.
Yes, that's right. My camera is overheating.
Yeah. That keeps delivering the same results and the same kind of mishmash of people in different guises, Reform or Greens or, whatever it is. And I think people rightfully look at that, don't they, with much cynicism. And I understand that. But as I mentioned earlier, politics isn't just that. It's activism. It's doing things in your community. It's bringing groups together in your community. It's looking at ways to not comply with things, like the whole, digital ID campaigns that have been going on and people going out talking about that and
So
protesting.
here I will interrupt you because I came to this mantra in my adult life that you cannot answer wrongly formulated question. You cannot answer correctly the wrongly formulated question. So when people say, I will not comply with the digital ID, they're missing the point because we're not contesting technology. The same way like you got cardless payment and you got CBDCs. On the surface, they're both the same, but then there's a different underpinning of the system. So we are not disputing technologies, how technology can be used. So I wouldn't mind, and we are still using those things. This is we cannot reverse the time or just like you said, run for the hills and become preppers or whatever.
Yeah.
So certain things are inevitable with the technological progress, as long as they are not used for tyrannical control, I have no problem with that. The same like with medicine. When we're throwing, let's say, pharmaceuticals. Okay, I'm pretty sure there was a situation where I took antibiotic, and maybe if I wouldn't take antibiotic, maybe I wouldn't survive. So I don't want to go into absolute extreme, but then on the other hand, there is extreme where pharmaceutical corporation bribe politicians and then force this situation when they literally said no job, no job. So this is another side, another extreme. So it should be down to an individual. If you want to take those drugs, you're free to do so. This is like the libertarian stance. But you
Yes.
should be also briefed correctly about the risk, because this is
Yes.
another thing. And here is the thing. Like I said, I never heard term anti-vaxxer. From my position now, I wouldn't vaccinate again if I will, knowing what I know now. I'm not
Yes.
convinced. You would have to do some work with me to convince me that this is actually working. However, there were so many fringe ideas that came because, again, like I said, pendulum swings both ways. So
Yes.
people on one hand, they're attacked, and there were so many stances which I would say radicalized people. So the next thing I wasn't aware was the notion of so-called truthers and trutherism. I had one gentleman who explained that to me because I started joking about this and I was ridiculing the whole thing. And then he explained to me, and I understand his point of view, that where did this came from? So after 9/11, people were traumatized. So whatever you will look at this, whether it was government who blow up the World Trade Center, or it was just the government who funded terrorists who blow up World Trade Center, either way, it was government who orchestrated this to start war,
Yes.
right? And we've seen this video with General Clark saying that they will invade 7 countries in 5 years or something to that tune.
Yes.
So they had this pre-planned. So this realization, how bad the government can be, was shocking to the people. And then obviously people, they had their concerns, but they were dismissed. They were called, oh, you're conspiracy theorists. So I can understand why this went to that extreme. So those people were traumatized. They couldn't handle the situation. But what they developed, I refer to this as identity. They created counterculture. The same way during Vietnam War, there was
Yes.
two fronts.
Yeah.
There was a political protest. There was student protesting. There were political movement protesting and activists aiming to end the war and to change the law. So those were real actions. And there was also counterculture that formed on the back of this. So that
Yes.
was
Yeah.
flower children, hippie movement. They had their festivals. They wanted to reject the society. They went into full-on hedonism, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And somehow they didn't manage to create the better society. But they went into fringe and they went into escapism. And this didn't even last for 8 years. So this is in respect to
Yeah.
what you were saying about people organizing in little communes. I
Yeah.
literally, a few days ago, I had an exchange in a Truthers group. I had this debate going for months, and I was always reverting to politics because I thought since those people are already activists, they are meeting, they are doing something more than the average person. So I thought that this is the right people to talk to, if that makes sense. I thought this is the right people to debate those things. And I wanted to give them lessons from Polish history. So I started debating history. I told them the story I gave here, Poland transformation. How did we get from communist occupation to the free election? I gave all that story in very detail, yeah. And then discussion went to them arguing about nonsense like flat earth, right? And those fringe identities like light workers, rising vibration, and all this neo hippie stuff. And
Yes. Goes off in so many different ways, though, doesn't it? When these sort of
Yes,
counterculture.
and I looked at this, and this is now literally
And then
resembling
you've even got sort of cults that have, I call them
yes, the
cults that
hippie
formed in all
movement.
this.
Now, those people, they go on absolute fringe because they say now everything is a conspiracy. Earth is flat.
There is
everything is a
that
lie.
extreme, and I've come across
There
that
is
a
no
lot with people.
there's like complete extreme. Everything is a lie. Everything is made up.
Yes.
It's just absolute extreme.
I know
It's
quite
like
a few people that think
pendulum
that way. Yeah.
swing both ways. And
Yeah.
those people obviously reject the politics because in their, I can understand, they are hurt. They have no representation. They suffer. But it doesn't mean that politics doesn't work. They seem to not understand that politics actually does work.
They
The
reject
reason why
politics.
they're poor,
Absolutely.
why they're oppressed is because politics work, but they have no stake in it. This is what the problem. This is bad diagnosis, right? This is the reason why I really was excited to have you on and debate this, because this is what people don't understand, and you understand the role of politics.
No, absolutely. I do. I very much. I mean, my whole life has been, I mean, you know, I grew up in a really political household. My mum was very, very political. Always, whether that's people see it rightly or wrongly, you told me to vote. I remember going with pride as soon as I could, and I went to vote, putting my paper in the ballot box. I remember being very proud, and then I went and studied politics at university, and I ended up teaching politics. And so it's, you know, and then I've been an activist and involved in the Labour Party for years, and then I used to work for Labour as well. So I've been involved in it in all different ways. I've seen it from all different perspectives. I've seen it as an outsider as well. Obviously, during lockdown, I was the outsider then as well, from the whole system, from everything. So I've seen it from every possible way, you know, as a teacher, as a student, as working in a party, I even worked in the House of Commons. So I've seen it in every way. And while I can very much understand that outsider perspective that you're talking about, you know, the cults that form, the countercultures, like I understand all that. I can be very conspiracy minded. As I'm sure you're aware. I question everything. I'm very critical, but, and this is what I think, if I can use this word, I think we have to discern, Rad. We have to discern and we have to be rational in the sense of, and there is a rationality to being a conspiracy theorist because it's about questioning and looking for evidence. But the other end of that is people that are questioning and then they haven't got any evidence.
I'm not throwing baby with the bathwater.
That's the extreme, isn't it? It's
everything is called conspiracy. Us talking together now is conspiracy, right? It depends how we formulate things. So I would say our reality, political reality, representation, where the problem is. I'm just looking at the problem. The problem is that we have no accountability in politics and we have no representation. That's why we're heading to this techno-feudalism, techno-fascism model instead of democracy. Instead of democracy, we've got idiocracy. We've got system which legitimizes itself. Oh, there you go, folks. You voted this. You voted for uniparty, and whoever you voted, you can vote and change the parties. You can't change the policy. This is not democracy.
Because the whole system, and I think we've probably talked about this before, the whole political system in this country has been taken over by, and this is where the Palestine issue does come in, and we mentioned that earlier, and you did say we should talk about this. We have to talk about the elephant in the room, and people don't like talking about this because they're scared of censorship, but I'm going to say it, if I may. We have two big issues in this country. We have what you talked about earlier. We have fascism in the definition that Mussolini used, corporate fascism, where corporations, billionaires, and banks have taken over everything. I mean, everything. They do actually control the political system in the sense of local elections and the digital systems that they use and the data that they use to record and electronic recording of data is all run by private companies, which opens it up to corruption, and it is corrupt. So we've got elections being run by private companies, not being run by councils anymore. People don't even know that. I think it's about 70% of local elections now are run by private companies. And I think the biggest one, I'm trying to remember the name of it, is called Civicus. They're also part of the network that does all the payments to councils called Capit. I think it's called Capitus. Capitus. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's all part of the same network of companies. I think there's links to BlackRock in there as well. Surprise, surprise. So you've got these big corporations and companies that are running our political system. They're also controlling the political parties through donations and funding politicians. And the other part of this dynamic that we have to call out, and this is where, those people that want to go down the rabbit holes and want to look at conspiracy theories, where some people are missing a big link here, this is where what Zionist banking interests, corporate interests in this country that are very much linked to the state of Israel and their interests in Israel financially and politically are increasingly, the evidence is coming out that they're controlling lots of things that are going on in this country. And I think we have to start putting those two things together in the sense of we have a hijacked political system in this country where it's hijacked by a genocidal foreign state of Israel. And it's controlling our financial institutions. It's controlling our educational institutions. Most universities and colleges have money invested in Israel and Israeli interests. This has all come out, with all the research the last few years that Palestine Solidarity Campaign, Stop the War, all those people have been talking about all this. You've got most, you look at the City of London, you've got lots of Zionist money that's controlling that.
Even those, sorry to interrupt you, like I remember literally reading that 40% of all war dirty money comes through City of London. And how we can accept this? The world is completely on its head. The same like United Nations, they are not intervening. I mean, you were familiar with Gaza pre-23. I wasn't. It only came to my attention because this was literal live stream genocide. So I wasn't aware what is happening in this part of the world. Now this same situation, same model is being deployed in Lebanon because they are also wanting to destroy the local population.
Yeah, they're occupying, just as they've done with Gaza and Palestine for a long time. They're occupying.
But when you look at this as well, there's this question: is this tail wagging the dog, or dog is wagging the tail? I would say, because when you look at really, again, the question is much bigger, because this is the thing with all those so-called conspiracy theories. Of course, they are conspiracy theories, but this world is so utterly complex, and it's very difficult for people to comprehend. And human brain craves simplicity. So that's why if people will hear nice story, oh, it's just a satanic cabal, it's reptilians, shape-shifting reptilians, or something outrageous.
But if I may say so, Rad, on that point, what I want to say, as someone that's often labelled as a conspiracy theorist, and I do question everything, and there are some things that I've said before or agreed with that, is that there, to me, again, we've got to discern, because I think there's a big, and this has all come out, that the CIA, all this has come out, have deliberately put conspiracy theories out there as an idea to distract the population, because you've got those cults and you've got those movements that get fixated on things like flat earth or aliens, and they keep dragging that one up. I know that Trump's very good at doing this in his administration, that there's this strange lights in the sky. We had all that last year, didn't we, being reported? It was all distracting people, I do think there's two parts of this. I think there is the genuine things that we need to question, the shady, corrupt stuff, the stuff that was going on during the lockdown here, me talking about foreign powers that are tied up with the banking industry, all that, there's genuine stuff that's going on to control us and manipulate us. And then you've got the stuff that's being deliberately pushed to focus people's minds away from what we're talking about. And that, to me, is the alien stuff. I'm sorry, it's the flat earth stuff. I even think, to some extent, and I'm not saying that they don't manipulate the weather, but I think sometimes there's such a focus on that people forget about the main bread and butter issues, like our political rights, our economy,
So
jobs,
this is what I
housing.
mean. Let's say I would say also lean to, let's say, agreeing on things like geoengineering that this is taking place. But then in the end, again, what is this? Politics. Why? I'm looking what is the solution. The solution, in my view, is politics. Because ultimately, even big corporation, all the Coca-Colas and Blackrocks of this world, they're nothing without us client. It is in interconnected system. Their power is in equal proportion that we give them, right? So we are empowering those entities. If we will work on this consciousness, when we are being bamboozled with and gaslighted with all these sustainability goals, those are not sustainability goals. Those are fascism sustainability goals. They got nothing to do with sustainability. So just ecologically speaking, there was a report that in just assessing emission in U.S. war of aggression against Iran, if that would go on for a year, right, this would equal total emission of all 84 countries combined from the lower end of the scale. So we got nearly half of the planet population emission. We would have equal emission just in one conflict. So obviously that is politics, right? Big money goes behind this. And this is what we need to understand. This is the challenge of our time, to understand that we cannot tolerate this fascism. And especially nowadays, when we've got the social media, when we've got this information at disposal, while I appreciate, like in 70s, 60s, people were easily to propagandize because there was just a one medium, one
Yeah,
black and white TV in every house with only one or two channels. So, all newspapers, they would be spitting same propaganda. Now we've got this information, but this is what I mean. Now people go on this fringe, so they completely distrust the system and they reject the very thing. Because okay, if you're dooms prepper, right, are you ready with your crossbow till you get shot by people with machine gun or you get arrested? You think that you will be left alone? Or people go into some absurd like freeman of the land theories that something isn't lawful or illegal. I guarantee you communist regime wasn't lawful or legal, and they could just go to your house, drag you by your feet and kill you, right? And they
exactly.
would give
Yeah,
an slightest for your Magna Carta and for you writing your name in lowercase, right?
absolutely. And I think, yeah. I mean, I can.
But then people go into this because this is like a big emotional investment. This is identity protection because people are traumatized. So now they go into these identities. I'm a truther. I'm a light worker. I'm
Because
a
it's
pure blood.
because it's a comfort that people feel like they're in control of. Oh, I've got these secret
They're
we've
not
got
in
these secret
control.
powers and freedoms that we can use. Oh, we now know this, and it's like your get out of jail free card, isn't it? You know, people feel they're
It
desperate,
isn't.
they're looking for desperate solutions, like they were when they voted for Trump, or like they are when they're voting for reform. People
It
are
is
desperate.
hovering.
And I
I
think
would
it's
say
and I think the whole and I have called that out over the last 6 years, and I've had a lot of stick for doing so, calling out the whole um, you know common law freeman of the land movement, because to me it's absolute folly. It really is. And a lot of it that they put out, these people as well, is not true. They talk about parts of the Magna Carta that don't exist anymore, and I just feel it's just feeding people false hope. And
on that note, because there's some things I witness. I witness people stopping repossessions. Because also on the other hand, people, when they started questioning, because there is also a grain of truth in what they are saying. Let's say your parking fines and they are contesting council tax. Certain of those things, they are actually even illegal in the very legal system that we are in, right? So we're not trying to bypass the system. Even if you question, the same way like if you go to court to defend your case, right, whatever those will be parking ticket, then you have to prove that somehow the contract wasn't created or whatever. Those people, this is the grain of truth in this, or let's say with the repossessions as well. There is procedure which needs to be followed to evict person, and if that procedure isn't adhered, then rightfully those people were stopping evictions, and this was fantastic to see because this was like a grassroots movement. But this again faded away. This is the level of desensitization that we've got in this society, where you can be dragged by your feet from your house and nobody will lift a finger. Even most likely with this consumer society, there is no connection anymore. You might even not know your neighbor name, right? Because everybody is just preoccupied with consumerism. And this is the problem. And people then feel dissatisfaction, and then they will be scapegoating, like you said, they will be scapegoating immigrants. But who is bringing those immigrants? It's not few Albanian gangsters running trafficking ring. It's countries running trafficking ring. You will not smuggle thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, without coordination, international coordination.
Absolutely.
This is countries doing it. Politicians are invested by the eyebrows in those schemes, because they are, show me a hotel that will be rented at 100% occupancy.
That's a big
with guaranteed rent,
absolutely,
with repairs guaranteed on a taxpayer. No private business can ever hit 100% occupancy. And I know this because I'm working in property. That's my background. So those schemes, when we really dig down, they're all about money. They're all about corporate interest, collusion with the state, this fascistic model. But again, not throwing baby with the bathwater, because ultimately politics is the thing that works. Otherwise, that wouldn't happen. I'm pretty sure we can transform politics. We can change the corrupt government the same way like Poland, Eastern Europe, and the rules of the game. Because why cannot we change the model? Because at this moment you're voting for the party, and even if person that you voted for is promising you things, they now have to adhere what the party says. This needs to end. Individual accountability, this is what needs to happen. Like in business, if you propose something, you're doing project, you're running company, if you failed with something, you get sacked in a private corporation. So why this is not case with the politicians? And like career politician, this must end. We need to revert to this original meaning, public servant. Not how come all those people, they are getting 80K a year job as a minister and they're ending up as a millionaire. How is this happening? If we tackle the corruption at the source, it is very much possible. But this is what the problem, I think, today exists, that people, they are disenfranchised. Of course, yes, the current situation is, yes, you have no representation. That's why you're saying politics doesn't work. But reason why you're oppressed is because politics work. You're just also disenfranchised.
The reason we've got to this point where politics is so corrupt and where politicians will not listen to the public, will sit in council meetings and ignore public questions or not allow people to speak, or, I've been on the receiving end of all of that. That is horrific the way they treat the public. But the reason it's got to that is because for so long, the public have not taken any interest in this country. It's something like 0.5%, Rad, of people that are politically active in the sense of, attending meetings or, going on a protest or whatever. It's a tiny amount of the population. People are not engaged. And if you go back to those democratic principles of what makes a democracy, like people like, Thomas Paine when they looked at America, or John Stuart Mill here, the principles of, looking at liberty. The idea of having rights is that you have responsibilities with those rights in a democracy. And if we have rights, you need to use them. And we haven't been using them. These hard fought, we talk about the suffragettes and women, and I'm talking to you as a woman, all the women listening, and even working class men that had to, wait till they got the vote as well. Those hard won rights. And what have people done? since World War II in increasing numbers every year. They're not voting. They're not being involved in politics locally, in local issues, in local campaigns, in going to meetings. They don't get involved in anything. They don't even want to watch it on the news. They switch it off. Not that I want to watch the news either, but there's been this complete disengagement, this cutting off from politics. And we, by doing that, we as in everybody, the people, have handed fascism is inevitable. When you do that, fascism is inevitable, corruption's inevitable, because they've got an open door to do what they want, because they know no one's questioning it. And you can see it, Rad. I mean, if you go into a council meeting and you do manage to get in there and scrutinise, they're absolutely terrified. It's like, oh my God, a member of the public actually knows something. A member of the public's questioning me. They get into meltdown because they're not used to it. So
it was last year, I think last year, no, 24, sorry. Local activists from Leeds, they went to Leeds Council and they were grilling them about net zero and so-called climate crisis.
Yeah.
And those people were absolutely shocked, like you said, because they are not used to be scrutinized. And then people, they got used to just basically ignore things, right? They disengage from political activity. And because of that, they handed control to somebody else. And now they're surprised that they're not doing well because they have no say. Democracy is also not the fair system. It's a mob system, right? If you take 10 guys with you and it's just me, you can enforce your rule over me, right? So it can also go bad. But out of all the systems of the past, democracy is still the best that we have.
I completely agree.
Just look at the recent situation. This is the thing. That I looked recently. Election of Zoran Mamdani in New York.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So he was absolute underdog. And this is the reason why I re-engage after the last few years, why I connected with this so-called Truthers movement, because I wanted to speak politics, right? Because nothing substantial is changing, right? We can protest, but then protesting, the joke of protesting is like, say, if you're living in an abusive relationship, if there is a husband beating woman, and the woman will take a placard, will go in front of the block for 3 hours, and she will be protesting. She will make some noise, and she will come back to live with the abusive husband. That's where we are, right? That's how I feel, because nothing substantial changed. We protested, which is part of democracy. We stopped something because the process of lockdown and oppression was immediately stopped.
Kind of held some things back a bit, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes, we pushed it back. There's no doubt about this. But then this is what I mean, divide and conquer, and then bread and circus. So people, they fall for all those psyops. Everybody is controlled opposition. Everybody is a shield. The people, they engage in, that's why I call this, sorry for being abrupt, mental masturbation, right? They argue about nonsense. They are glued to their smartphone for 8 hours straight, copying and pasting shit on their Telegram channels. They're not even engaging on the mainstream channels where they could have debate. They actually are in echo chambers, and they are just having this identity. And identity stops your intelligence because you're not questioning the system. Like you said, I agree with you. Question everything. Question the politicians, question agenda, question what we've got to say here. I have no problem with that. But do something about this. Most people, they just disengage, and they take this the same way like social media is a substitute of social relation. Porn is not the same as having sex. It's a substitute, The same way with all this, this is like LARPing of being in opposition, because I'm sharing some memes or some nonsense on social media. It doesn't mean you're in opposition. But I can also understand this is risk-free, right? Posting about satanic cabal on your Telegram group cost you nothing. going out to protest, you can be beaten up, arrested, restrained, and you can face consequences. And it's costing you money because you need to get to the place, spend money for fuel, ticket, whatever. It is an actual cost involved and actual dedication, right?
Yeah.
So, and on this, I want to just wrap it up because only 60% of people went to election, which is telling. So that means that 19 million people didn't vote it.
Absolutely.
And because the system in UK is rigged, it's called first past the post.
Yeah.
That's why Labour, who only achieved 15% of votes, managed to get into the government.
With a landslide.
Absolutely laughable.
A landslide when most people didn't support them. What does that tell you? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So only 9.7 million people actually voted. 9.7 million people voted them in. So 19 million didn't vote it. They are disenfranchised. So for you to say politics doesn't work, it bloody does. It just doesn't work for you. And just make your mind up. Come together with people. Because otherwise, this will only get worse. You see direction where it is heading. It's not getting any better since 2020. Even previous debate, pre-Brexit, is just getting worse and worse and worse. Yes. And because UK is a sophisticated country with developed infrastructure, and soon you will be having tax for your breathing, like they're expanding ULEZ zone, clean air zones, tax upon tax upon tax upon tax upon tax, and penalty upon penalty upon penalty. Do you want to live like this? I'm sure not.
Of course, I think you're absolutely right, and I think what we're living through. In fact, I mean, a lot of people talk about the present like it's unprecedented. We've never lived through times like this. Actually, we have lived through times like this before in this country and in other countries. This cycle that you've talked about. It's just that obviously we've got technology now. That's the difference. But what I would say to people, and I'm going to use your way of thinking, if I may, from the beginning of the discussion, is if we look back, and this is how I feel it's going, you may disagree with me, Rad, and I hope it also gives some sort of hope in terms of the future, is if we look back, and we're at a similar point in history now to what we were just before World War II, literally just before World War II in this country. We're at that, economically we're in the same position, politically we're in the same position, with the political parties we're in the same position as we were then. Poverty as well was really bad just before World War II in this country, and we've got growing poverty in this country. I mean, the housing issue. So we've got all similar factors going on, and we've got this apathy with politics, but also this desperation, with the growing sort of fascist protests and the whole Tommy Robinson stuff, which is again is desperation from people. And
we can do separate episode about this because there's lots to uncover. We should play some clips, like show people this social engineering that happened. But I wanted to start debate today, right? We've been going for nearly 2 hours, so we will be wrapping this up.
That's what I was just about to say, was that we're leading up. This is how I feel the change is going to come. That I feel for great change to happen, something great has to happen to fuel the change. And unfortunately, there is something that is developing that is beyond and I do think this is beyond our control. We can't stop people dropping bombs. I'm sorry, but I don't think that's something we can stop. But we can stop our response. We can change our response to it. And I think, we're on the precipice of controls coming in this country, war controls, war conditions, digital controls. And there's one thing that people can do to fight back is not to comply with any of that. I'm not saying that's not going to stop things happening, but if there's any time in history, Rad, that I feel that people are more likely to not comply with things like conscription and national service, I think it's now. And I think people can come together. And I do see in public opinion that people don't want to do these things. They don't want conscription. They don't want, of course they don't. They don't want their children fighting for war. And that's one thing I think we can fight back on, it's not necessarily stopping a war, but in how we respond to it, which makes it much
This
harder.
is eventually, I mentioned Vietnam War. This was lengthy process, but eventually this was falling apart on many fronts. One of them being battlefront, but then also activists, also role of counterculture. But this is what I mean. This is my understanding of politics, that we can shape reality. Let's say Polish transformation liberated us in political sense, but in a way we are still not a sovereign country because we are under, let's say, Western influence. So we were handed over from Soviet sphere of influence. Many of our national industry were sold out during transformational period. So it wasn't necessarily all good for Polish people. But I'm still giving you this as a living example, actual evidence that change is possible. And this
Absolutely.
is only possible if millions of people come together, if we come over our differences. Because likewise, if you think, oh, it's illegal to protest, it was bloody illegal to protest in Poland. You could get done, literally killed. Nothing as such is happening in the UK right now. So to have this liberty and not to use this is for me working for the enemy by your apathy. You're just choosing side of your occupant, yeah. And
But maybe we need the lockdown. We've talked about the lockdown a lot tonight and how very different people came together. And the reason they came together was there was an urgency for their immediate civil liberties.
There was immediate threat. That's the difference now. But then now we are in this phase where people are being absolutely hammered economically,
Absolutely.
and they don't understand the game of system, how it is being rigged against them. If they would understand, they would rebel. But then this is the thing. This is it needs to get worse before
It's
it can get.
trickle. It's been done very.
Yes, because then there is that frustration. So again, I don't want to be dismissive. The same way I was saying things about people who went on the fringe with those woo-woo identities like truthers, light workers, and like I call this neo-hippie stuff. But then on the other hand, even in a crowd that went protesting on United Kingdom rally, this is also showing level of frustration, and it was bringing simple people who are just fed up. But obviously they had also bad intention because they were scapegoating migrants. Like, let's say if tomorrow I will wave the magic wand and all guys like me and all the dingy boys disappear, will you be living in a land of milk and honey? I'm telling you
that's the question, isn't it? That they need to think
that this will not happen. So
of course
if
not.
you're blaming the guy, right? But then you're not looking at who is robbing you blind.
Who's pulling the strings? Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is scapegoating. This is populism. It is manipulating the frustration. This is actually the reason why I reached out to you, because you said that this election was just politic engineering. It was not actual change.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same. You've gone off. I don't know.
That's okay. I'm just switching.
You're still here. Yeah, it's just that the same players, just with slightly. The way I worded it, I think, wasn't it, on a social media post that you responded to, was the same players wearing slightly different coloured rosettes. That's exactly. I mean, literally as well. I mean, you've got Tory MPs that have literally just moved over and put a reform rosette on. So that should tell people something about, is this really something new and change? It's the same old people with the same old ideas, actually, just dressed up with a different rosette. And, you know, nothing's changed in that way in terms of the political parties. But on an end note, because I appreciate it's getting really late, because I know we've had problems getting online tonight. I mean, what I would say is the way I see the future is, and I'm being really realistic here, but also looking in terms of what I think could eventually happen, is that I think we've got lots of opportunities coming up that can come out of crisis, as they did during lockdown.
This is literally a reason why I gave this brief history of Polish history, because look, it took 48 years. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick. But eventually people, they stick together. and they achieved change through means of political movement. And
Yeah,
that's why I give this as a prescribed medicine, if you like.
absolutely. Yeah.
Unless we are ready to fight and we are ready for this kind of escalation, then I,
But, but British people, if I may say so, if you study the history of political resistance in this country, British people on the whole are, with a small c, conservative and passive to, because of the class system we've had here for such a long time, to power. So for people to resist, or like they did during lockdown, the way the way we came out, they need a big catalyst, in my opinion, to do that. Lockdown was a catalyst where people come together, and I think it does look like there's going to be more things coming down the line. And I do think this is all going to be tied in with a war agenda. I'm very much about that at the moment, and I think it could be an opportunity for that left-right nonsense which we've been talking
let's
about.
talk politics.
Put it
Yeah,
aside
let's
and
engage. This
come
is the key.
together again in urgency. And I'll be ready again, and I'll probably be arrested again, God knows what, Raj. But, to come together again and say, let's put all the Tommy Robinson, yeah, you don't agree with the Palestine stuff, whatever, let's put that aside, come together, because, we have to. And I think that time might come again. I just feel at the moment we're in a lull. And we're in a lull because I actually think that the powerful, it's a chess game, and they're constantly watching us to make sure they've got us in check, that we can't move any further. And that 2 steps forward, 1 step back, it's that shuffle all the time. And they're constantly, it's like the whole virus agenda. There's been
But
lots
you also said this, which I need to admit, we're giving without a fight. So they got this easy game because we're giving them easy game. If we would engage and we scrutinize them, so this is by disengagement. It's like for evil to prevail, this saying, all it takes is good people to do nothing. So this apathy that happened, so this is why I'm calling people to talk politics, right? And I wanted to start this discussion. I want to invite more people on podcasts and talk politics, talk history, talk the real events that happened in the past, and let's learn from this, because we've got the power. Ultimately, it's not that 400,000 people, they're not ready to die.
Like that. We can change it tomorrow. If we all just got all these fake, left, right, boat people, migrants, all this stuff, we just forgot about all that and came together and said, right, we're not having a digital ID. We're not doing. We all just come together on these issues.
The issue is, like you said, because people confuse those things. They say, "Oh, I will not comply with the digital ID." It's not digital ID that is problem. The problem is that your government become tyrannical and you've got no representation. There's no accountability in politics. This is the problem, not the digital ID per se.
That's true.
It's just a symptom.
Of it all, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just a symptom. Every camera that is popping out there to fine you is just a symptom of your government being too oppressive. Why it's being too oppressive? Because you have no representation and you have no accountability in politics. This can be changed, but it takes massive engagement. And like I said,
yes,
the balance of power, I personally witnessed two situations to wrap this up. One situation was at Parliament Square. One of the leaders of, at the time, it was Save Our Rights movement, Vincent Dulmal. I overheard. I got video from that conversation. He was speaking to TSG commander, TSG Territorial Support Group. It was it isn't your average police constable. There was those were those anti-rioting squads, right? They were wearing helmets, batons, shields, and they were beating protesters. Yeah. So they had commanders. So they were divided in a group. So commander would have like a red helmet, green helmet. There were the groups, and there would be gold commander that would be leading the army, if you like. So I think he was speaking to either one of the commanders or maybe even gold commander at that time. And he said, you guys, you just voted new politicians in, right? Because we were, and I need to admit I was one of those people, we were shouting at police, choose your side. But what sides is there for them to choose? Have we offered them anything? There is no other side. There is no alternative. We didn't create alternative. So from those people point of view, it was interesting to also hear what those people have got to say. So he said, guys, just vote new people in because they're not bothered. They are chasing, they just chase whoever they're told to chase. They chase football hooligan. Next day they chase anti-lockdown protesters. Next day they chase Palestine action and whatever else. Yeah, they don't care. They just do their job. They're switched off.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is the thing. And another thing is this engagement, right? By not playing, the 100% thing that doesn't work is doing nothing. This will not work 100% of the time. You doing nothing and giving up on your future and
It's
future of your
it's a
children.
logical thing as well, isn't it, Rad? If you do
disengagement.
nothing, what are you going to get? Nothing.
That's why I want people to engage. That's why I call Debbie. I want to start the debate. And even though, like, why should I even say I'm a Polish? Why should I care? It's because I'm Polish, because I got this experience.
No. Absolutely. You've got a very good perspective to say. I think everyone's got a perspective, to be honest, whatever it is, but no, very much so.
But people will say what this bloody foreigner is saying about our country, whatever. This is what I'm saying, because this is something which is relatable from a history of my country. And it's this experience that we had in the past, and we managed to fight for our freedom. And another thing, I gave you numbers. 1 million people, I would say this represented only 10%, because only ever 10% of people will do something. So there is at least 10 million people who think alike. 10 million people, it's what voted Labour in. So why we're not engaging in politics? Why don't we turn things upside down? If we're seriously, honestly believing in what we're saying, we should fight tooth and nail for it, right?
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, this is future for our children. It's nothing else.
Absolutely.
So politics, we cannot ignore this. Politics works. The reason why you're poor, hungry, oppressed, depressed is because politics work. But it's not working for you. This is the thing. But you don't have to buy yourself this disengagement idea. Oh, I'm a light worker, I'm raising my vibration, I'm sharing shit on Facebook or Telegram. This is not opposition work. Protesting is opposition. Starting political party. I gave this example of Zoran Mamdani. So just to give you this example, because so many activists, they do outreach, they give various leaflets.
Yes,
they stand with yellow boards at the roundabouts.
Absolutely.
But what if they would spend that time campaigning? I had 3 leaflets by reform chucked through my door. Okay? What does it tell you? Right?
Exactly.
This is campaigning. Zoran Mamdani, who was underdog.
Get the message to people.
He came with the message which was about, I will reduce your cost of groceries. I will make public transport free of charge. He addressed social issue, and he had 50,000 people campaigning for him for free because people were just fed up.
Yeah.
And we can do the same, because at the end of the day, we are already campaigning. We are fed up with this. We are not backtracking. So why don't we come together over our differences? Because we want to have reasonable country. We want to have this. We don't want wars. We want to live decently. We want future for our children. There's nothing to disagree about here, right?
Well, I so appreciate the time. There's so much we could talk about, but I think that I completely agree with you, and I think a lot of people will agree with you in principle. But I think that in reality, I think the difficulty is, as I said, there's just some people that can't let go of that entrenched left-right position, in the sense of they don't want to come together with people that they feel are their enemy. They're not their enemy, as we've just said this evening. So we've got that challenge. That perhaps we can return to this and talk about how you overcome that, because it's very difficult, and I've tried really hard with it myself. So we have that problem, which is very much being played out at the moment. And I think the other big thing, which is something much more fundamental to all of us as human beings, is people's egos. People's egos, when it comes to activism and coming together, are a huge issue that we struggle with, and that the freedom community struggled with, in the sense of everybody wants a piece of the pie. Everybody wants to have ownership. and get credit for everything. And it turns into that rather than it does about, as you just said, just getting out there and doing it, which is always, I'm sure you've seen me, all I want to do is just get out there and do it. Just get out there, get the leaflets out, talk to people, do stuff. So it's how we bring all that together, isn't it? And which is why I said, I think sometimes it's catalysts that we need to take opportunity with, waiting for the catalysts. And I do think they're coming, more catalysts for people to come together. Because that's, at the moment, that's what we need to take with people away from the division. That
nothing will happen in a day. That's why I wanted to give you that idea. But we can do things, unimaginable things over decades.
I mean, that movement that comes together in a very fragmented and very disorganized way, even though it was like that, they still managed to push back on a lot of the lockdown controls, and certainly on the COVID passports. It really did push back on that, actually, it did. And I think that really did made a difference. So yeah, politics, absolutely, Rad. Politics works. It worked, didn't it?
Let's talk more politics. Let's organize.
No, absolutely. It's just using those. That's to me, and I know I keep repeating myself. It's using those catalysts when they come along, using it, and not the catalysts that the politicians and the powerful are using, like immigration. They're using that for their ends. We need to use things for our purpose as common people coming together.
We're going to wrap up here. I mean, I'm just going to read last comments. We got Jules. Hey, not seen you guys since Boris days. Looking good, Debbie. So you see,
I'm trying to read the name. I don't recognize the name, but yeah.
We're still connected. I mean, people use nicknames on YouTube or Facebook, so it's hard to recall. And this was when we said about indoctrination. So people got hooked into TV after World War II. Then people have been numbed out since then, trauma and TV. And also about ridiculousness, where we're going. So somebody replied to comment that they want to charge people for cycling. You will be charged for breathing very soon, because this is the direction where it is heading. Is the question what you will put up with. And again, we are trying to not radicalize you. We try to politicize you, okay? Because politics works. So absolutely. Stand up for your politics.
It does work. And it's just, I mean, and I'm going to be really honest here. I mean, I've been an activist most of my adult life. There's periods, obviously, when you've got kids and they're small and it's not so easy. And I sometimes do lose my, mojo, You do, because as I just said, you've got egos, you've got people fighting amongst themselves, you've got all this stuff, there's all this stuff with the Tommy Robinson stuff can be a bit demoralizing at the moment, where people are blaming Muslims for everything. I find that very, demoralizing, but I have faith in human beings that, people can come together, and there's phases in history where they eventually do come back together. And we will, as you talked about in Poland, I think we will have those times again. I'm certain of it. We will have those times again. We've just got to get through this time, find those catalysts and come back together. And I hope to see those of you on YouTube from the lockdown era. I hope to see you back out again. I'm sure I will. And Rad will be filming us.
I got experience. Just last two comments. This is why I don't underestimate the importance of just sharing few flyers. People have been put in prison for decades during apartheid just for sharing flyers. Even small actions are important. This is it.
Absolutely.
If you don't do anything,
that's how powerful it is. Why do they want to protest? I mean, all the people, Rad, that run down protests. We've had it for years, haven't we? About the protests that Fiona does, or that Louise Crefeld used to do. All the things that we've done. And it's like, well, why do they want to ban them? Because there's a power in bringing people together. Because when people rally together, it energizes people. It makes them feel like there's solidarity. It makes them feel like they can go away and do something, which they do. People bounce off that and they go off and they leaflet and they do stuff in their towns and their communities. It is not a waste of time. It really isn't. So, yeah. They don't want to ban elections, but they want to ban protests. What does that tell you?
if we would have representation, this is the thing. Let's start a political party or support people. You got connection to like Dave Curtin. Let's bring him to the conversation. We need to. That's what I mean. We need to engage here in the right department, because doing nothing doesn't work. This is 100%. Inaction doesn't work. Engaging in the right mechanism, which is politics, it does work, unless we're ready for extreme. I don't think we are. The story I gave today, it is possible. It's not easy, but let's do it. We can do it. And this was common. Interesting chat, very good explanation of the way political system works. And the last one. Hi, Debbie. Finally, glad you finally managed to do the video. We had some issues setting this up.
We had some problems again.
I wanted to start this. We're using different system. We tried 2 days for like 3 or so hours, but we managed to get video. Audio didn't came through.
Yeah.
So apologies for this, but this is pilot episode, so we're welcoming your feedback. If you'd like me and Debbie to do it again, just drop your comments and we will reply to them and we'll address this.
We can have a few more specifics that we can work through, because
we can talk through many things, election, how we are being socially engineered. That's an interesting subject. We can't really exhaust this, but obviously we already spent 2 hours today. We just wanted to give you intro. And we want to talk politics. Join us. Do politics, right?
Yeah, but no, it's very interesting, Rad, and I think your kind of comparisons and your
I got another from Lucy. Yes, I would like to see follow-up on this.
Of Poland. I think that's really important, actually, that we understand the trajectory to totalitarianism.
And it's not just this, because also
that's really important for people to hear that.
Alternative media prepare you a lot of what I called conspiracy porn. Yeah. So people are, because what is outrageous, what is outrageous content or scaring content is getting clicks and likes, but they're not proposing any solutions. And this is what we must understand, because nothing will get resolved from talking about problem. It can only get resolved if we actually get action in our hands, if we organize. That's why we want to talk politics.
And it's having the will to keep trying. If I may say so, it's having the will. And it's very hard to keep that will, because life comes at you. You know, you've got a family, you know what it's like. You know, life comes at you in all different directions with problems or challenges. I've been having a particularly bad year with my health, so it's not been easy for me to be on it. Sorry, I've got company.
That's enough.
It's not been easy for me to be on it as I usually am. So, you know, but it's to me, you've got to have, you know, having the will to keep going is very important. And I say that to anybody listening, just keep going. Whatever it is you do, even if it's just, you know, handing out leaflets once a week or wearing a badge. There's so many things people can do that are politics, as Rad said, you know, wearing a badge, which is what I do. I wear all sorts of badges. I've got my Palestine badges, I've got my cash badges, my digital ID.
This is perfect conversation starter.
It's a conversation starter, or a T-shirt, whatever it is. There's so many things people can do. It doesn't have to be big.
In Poland, literally during the darkest time of communist oppression, people were wearing radio resistor on their clothes to indicate that you can talk to them. It was like giveaway. Yes, you can talk to me, because this will be over. Otherwise, you will be risking problems. Yeah, being prosecuted or so. So yeah, I mean, we got this freedom. But why we're not using it? Let's go. Let's engage.
Absolutely, and we've got to use it while we can. We have to. We have to use it while we can, because they want to take it all of it away. And you know from Poland what that's like, and we have to get that message out to people. And I do think actually the penny's starting to drop with the public. It's just that because they've got this ferocious, powerful media at the moment that's sending them all these messages about blame these people, blame that. People are I'll be honest, I think they're confused. And I think that's whereas we as activists have to step in and fill in the gaps. It's a challenge, but we've got to keep going. And I think you're right. We need to talk more about how we do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for everyone who
That's
tuned
okay.
in.
Thank you for having me. And sorry we didn't get online till late, but we'll have to do it again, won't we? So yeah.
Yeah, we will expect more politics. You do politics, engage in politics. Yeah, politics works. That's why you're not doing well, because politics is working,
They're
and
not
some
doing
people
politics.
are doing very, very well because you're not well, right? Let's normalize this. This can be changed. Don't be defeatist. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.